What's going on, YouTube? This is D Riggedy Wreck here with Argo, bringing you another Gundam Card Game deck profile here on the channel. If you guys enjoyed today's deck profile, be sure to leave a like and subscribe for future content as always. Getting into today's deck profile, I have here today a largely recreated with my own twist, Red White Justice Midrange. If you saw my last feature match here on the channel, it was my Blue-White Academy Tempo deck versus this variation of the Red-White Justice Midrange list. I didn't get a chance to get his list, so this is largely recreated with my own twist and tech choices based off of the interactions that I had in my match against him last week there. So getting into this deck profile, it's going to be units first, and then commands, pilots, and then bases. To start off, we've got the token for the Justice Gundam, the Fatum 00. After that, we've got 3 copies of Zaku Mariner. This is just an early game 1-drop at the 2/2. You really just have it to have a body on the board, and that's largely it. But there's a reason specifically for this, and not the Demi Garrison like you saw in the feature match if you had a chance to watch that video. I'll get into that later on in the deck profile here. But next up, we have got 2 copies of Gira Zulu. You're starting to catch on to the reason why I'm playing the Zaku Mariner as opposed to the Demi Garrison. This is just another low body. It's a 3/2, but it has the Neo Zeon trait link for a linkable pilot there, so we'll get into that in just a minute there. Next up, we've got 4 copies of the Gundam Ilfrith. This is just an early game blocker, but it's a solid blocker being a 2/4, so it gets around most things that bounce, especially if you're going up against a white list that does play Hawk of Endymion. But otherwise, it's still a really good blocker for that reason, and just a good way to kind of tempo out a little bit in the early game. Next up, to follow up with more blockers, we've got 2 copies of the Launcher Strike Gundam. Because we're playing a white Kira package in here, and it has the Earth Alliance link trait, we can throw either Kira or, as you'll see later on, Hawk of Endymion in the list as well, as a linkable pilot to throw on here to make it either a 4/4 or a 5/4 blocker. And then it can also attack as well, just for the early game potential blocker, potential attacker. To follow that up, we've got 3 copies of the Sword Strike Gundam. So on the other end of that, we have a dedicated attacker that also has the during link when attacking effect to bounce a 2 HP unit on the opponent's board there. If they make a Tall Geese, or they make a Sword Strike Gundam from the Striker pack, or they have the Zor on the board, you'll be able to bounce that with this on attack. So it prevents a blocker, another attacker to break through. If you throw the Kira on, it's a 6/4. If you throw, because it's an Earth Alliance trait, the Hawk of Endymion on, becomes a 5/3. So still a really solid attacker and gets around most instances there. To make sure that you're keeping pace in the early to mid game. Next up, we've got 4 copies of the Aegis Gundam. Of course, since we're playing Justice, we have to be playing Atherin, and what other good target in the deck for Atherin would be the Mobile Armor Mode Aegis Gundam having Breach 3. Really solid. Some people like playing the regular Aegis Gundam. I think it's too situational in a lot of instances, because there's a lot of decks running around right now that play level 4 and under, especially like Rush, or if you're playing any kind of Amuro deck, most of that's level 4 and under anyway, so the regular Aegis just doesn't touch that. It's still decent as an attacker being a 5/5, but it's super situational compared to something like this that just has Breach 3 and has more HP, so it'll survive a couple interactions and be able to benefit having the Breach 3 essentially early in the mid game, getting into the late game if you need something to kind of break through. Next up, we've got 2 copies of the Perfect Strike Gundam. Again, the Earth Alliance trait just really leans into being able to generically link with either the Kira or the Hawk of Endymion to have a blocker, but also have an attacker at the same turn. So you can kind of play around in the mid game a little bit with your stats as well as your board state. And then you also have a blocker. If you don't have the link, it's just there. And especially if you're starting to tempo out your opponent, if they're playing Rush, you'll have something that's decently sized to get around a lot of the 2/2 or 3/2 attackers that Rush deck can play into a bit more. But that's what it's there for, and then the wing target makes it easier too. Next up, 2 copies of the Ale Strike. Versatile card in the mid game. The 4/4 the same way as the Perfect Strike is really solid. It is a Kira specific link target, but that's why we're playing Kira the way we are, and you'll see that later on in the lineup there. But for also the on pair, you get to bounce something that is 4 HP or lower, so you have a level 4 pilot, whether that's the Kira, or if you have to throw on the Atherin, you could do that too. Then you'll be able to get the bounce, and then it's another blocker. One way or the other, you have a solid body that's a blocker and potential attacker at the same turn if you need it. Next up, which is the kind of telltale giveaway of the list here, is 2 copies of the Shinanju. And the Shinanju is just another really good finisher for the deck on top of the Justice, as you'll see in a minute. The high maneuver, just when paired, is really solid. So if you have to throw Atherin on this, you play this down, you don't have the full frontal, you throw the Atherin Zala or even the Kira. The Kira will make this a 7-5, or the Atherin will make it a 6-6. But either way, it'll get the during pair gains high maneuver, and then the on attack to be able to ping something for 2 plays into some of the commands that we're playing as well in the list. But 2 copies of that, just not to clunk up the list a bit too much with high end, because we are playing 3 copies of the Justice. It's kind of the meat and butter of the end game. It comes in, it makes a 2-2 blocker, and if you have the pair and you are also attacking with it, which you ideally just want the link at that point, because you're going to make it, and then if you don't have the link, then next turn it's going to be able to attack anyway. But if you have the link, you throw this down, it makes the Fatoon 00, and you now have a 5-5 and a 2-2 blocker. If you do attack with it the same turn, it's 6-7. That's now also giving you a second attacker for free. You can be pretty aggressive if you've already done a lot to disrupt your opponent's board in the mid game, and then you play this out, and you have 2 attackers the same turn, especially if you have the Atherin. So really lean into the disruption in the early to mid game, and then have something to throw down that'll help you finish in the later game, whether that's the Sinanju or the Justice Gundam. Moving on to commands, we've got 2 copies of Hawk of Endymion, as I was saying there. 2 copies, good disruption early on. If you're not playing against a deck that throws a lot of small bodies with low HP on the board, then this doesn't really apply for the early game disruption. So you might not use this in that instance as the command. So the pilot aspect of it will benefit when you throw it on the launcher or the sword strike. But if you do play against an early game deck like green, blue, Zeon Rush, then this will bounce Zaku 2s, it'll bounce Char Zaku 2s, and that'll be really solid for disruption in the early to mid game. Next up, we've got 4 copies of Overflowing Affection. Generic draw card you definitely want to play 4, since it's not also a blue package, so you want as much draw as possible. 4 copies just makes sense. If you think it's too clunky, you can bump it to 3. But I think 4, you just need to have it to make sure that you're cycling through stuff, especially if you're not seeing your pieces. Next up, 2 copies of Close Combat. Generically good ping. If you burst check it, same thing, it does 2 damage. But really good, especially for early game, or if you need to hit specific numbers. Let's say you have Shinanju on board, you want to be able to destroy something while also swinging at shield. Throw this, ping for 2, Shinanju, ping the other 2, make 4 HP in that instance, and then be able to just break shield while also disrupting the opponent's board. To follow that up, we've got 2 copies of Battle of Aces. Similar situation, you go Shinanju, ping something for 2, throw this, ping it for 3. That's 5 HP, that gets rid of most things. Even an unlinked Justice will get destroyed by that. Or if you need to go full combo, Shinanju, this, and then Close Combat to get rid of an unlinked Wing Gundam 0. So that'll be the way you want to go with comboing into being able to deal damage early on or in the mid game to disrupt a little bit. Moving on to pilots, we've got 2 copies of Full Frontal. This is to go with the Shinanju and then potentially also the Girazul that we're playing. But largely, and this is why we're also playing the 3 copies of the Zaku Mariner. If you do link him or throw him on anything as a pilot, you'll be able to play one of those 2 things out for free. If you want to do that, throw down a Girazulu for free, link the second copy in your hand just to have 2 attackers right off rip, then you can definitely do that in the later game, and then the Girazulu becomes a 5-4. 5-4 attacker in the end game is still pretty solid. 2 copies of him just because we don't play too many linkable targets for Neo Zeon or the Cyber New type. We're not playing the Kshatriya in this list, so 3 copies if you want to play the Kshatriya, but I think you start getting away from the mid-range portion of it. You throw the Kshatriya, and it's a bit vanilla, and you'd rather see the Kira package instead. Next up, speaking of Kira, we've got 3 copies of Kira Yamato. We're not playing 4 because we don't have enough targets in the deck to link him with, because we're also playing the Mulaflaga. So between him and the Mulaflaga, we have 5 pilots that can link onto any of the other units that we played out before. So we've got the 2 launcher, the 3 sword strike, the 2 perfect strike, and then the 2 ale strike. It's only like 9 units. So 5 pilots to 9 units is a good ratio, I think. If you want to bump him to 4 just to generically have him, and you have a decent pilot that's still a 2-1 and it gets the on attack while it's paired, then you can do that. I would probably bump the overflowing for 1 more of him if you want to do that. Or if you want to ratio up entirely, cut the close combat entirely, play a 3rd copy of Battle of Aces, and then throw him in as the 4th copy to even out the playset. But 3 copies I think is fine for the ratioing that we have. And then next up, 4 copies of Atherin. We have 7 targets for Atherin to go onto, whether that's the Justice or the MA form Aegis Gundam. So 4 is perfectly fine, and then you get the link to be able to swing into something that's active. That largely benefits on the Aegis, because it'll have the Breach 3. You can do that as a trade early on, and then if you have 1 or 2 copies left, when you do draw the Justice and you get to turn 7, then you can throw this on. You have a 6/7, and then it makes the Fatum. That's also an attacker the turn it's played. So at 4, I don't think that there's any reason to bump him down to 3, because you're playing enough targets to justify playing him at 4. Moving on to bases now. We've got 2 copies of the vanilla 6 HP Mining Asteroid. This is just to get around specific instances, like if you're playing against Wing. The Wing Gundam with the Breach 5 is going to get through pretty much every other base except for the vanilla ones here. So you'll survive with 1 HP on this, and then it's going to require an additional attack from something else to get through your base to then start swinging its shield. So really solid for the 6 HP. But at 2, you're perfectly fine there, because we're going to follow that up with 2 copies of the Vesalius. And the Vesalius is just there to tap and make numbers, so if you need the extra 1 AP on the Aegis Gundam to make 5 when it's swinging in, that'll get around a Ale Strike with the link on it, so you can have that plus the Breach. Just making numbers in general is really solid for if you need them there. Same instance if you're swinging at a base directly. If you have the Aegis Gundam on board with the link, that's only 4. This will make it 5. In most instances, you'll break through the base that way, unless they're playing the green version of this as well. That is the entire list, ladies and gentlemen there. Again, if you enjoyed the deck profile, be sure to leave a like and subscribe as always. Leave a comment down below if you have any of your own thoughts or any tinkering you might have done with Red White. I know some people are playing the Red White full blocker version of this, so it plays the Zawarts, it plays the M1 Ashtrays, it plays the Kigali instead of the full frontal, with the Kira package still in there also, so it's like 4-4 and 2 or 4-3 and 3 with 3 of the Kira and then 3 of the Kigali. And then you're playing a lot of white attribute cards, whether those link targets or not for Kigali. It's just there to make it a blocker. And you'd sub in, instead of like the Vesalius or instead of the Mining Asteroid, you'd throw in the Archangel. But that's more specific to blockers. If you have any other tech choices for this, I would also love to hear those as well. But until the next video, guys, take care.